So for today's lesson, we're going to talk about another percent situation that you might see in the real world, and that this is interest. I'm not sure if you understand interest or if you know about interest, but basically interest is an amount that the bank gives you for either putting your money in the bank or from borrowing money from the bank. So if you decide to save your money and put it in the bank is happy to have your money because they can use it for other things. And so to kind of reward you or encourage you to do that, they give you a little bit of extra money every month, and it's called interest. Now, you can also borrow money from a bank in order to pay like for a car or a house or like credit card. And when you borrow money from a bank, the bank gives you the money, but when you pay it back, you have to give them a little bit of extra money to thank them for letting you borrow it. And that's also called interest. So you can either earn interest or you might have to pay interest. So you have a worksheet for your notes for today. And I don't want you to write on it right now. I just want you to sit for a minute and look at this situation and kind of just think about interest. So Jessie worked at a pool all summer and has saved $500. A couple of years, you guys might work, save some money, right? So Jessie's parents want her to put the money into a bank account where she would earn 2% interest on that $500 deposit, their starting amount. Jessie's thinking, I don't want to deal with the bank. I just want to put it under my bed and save it. And then when I'm ready, I can spend it. So let's take a look here for a second. So we put these on a graph for you. Now you don't have this on your paper, you're just watching and thinking. Now, if we take a look at this first table and graph, this is where Jessie's money is stored at home. So she put her $500 under her bed. So starting amount is 500. After month 1, 500, 2, 500, 3, 500, 4, 500, so on. So it's just a constant rate. It doesn't change. It just stays 500. It's just constant, right? No changes. Now, the second table and graph shows us what happens if Jessie does put her money in the bank account with the 2% interest. So for month 0, she puts it in the account and she's got $500. If she keeps it in there and she's earning interest, the bank is going to give her an extra $10 after the first month. So now she has $510. Then the next month it's 10 more dollars. So 520, 530, 540. So her amount that she has is increasing, and it's by a percent. So let's take a look at this. So my question to you is either one of these proportional? That's right. They're not. Why not? Because they don't start at the origin, right? So they're not going to have a constant proportionality. Since they're not proportional, today we're going to have to do something a little bit different. So when we're talking about interest, we cannot use the percent proportion because this is not a proportional relationship. We have to do something a little bit different. So now is where I need you to get that worksheet out, because we're going to take a few notes on how to calculate interest. So today we're going to learn how to calculate simple interest. All right. And so we're going to work with the simple interest formula to calculate some missing amounts. So the first thing we need to do is figure out what interest is. And maybe you already know what it is in your head. So let's just define it. We're going to say it is an amount of money earned or owed for investing or borrowing money. And hopefully after our example, that makes sense. So if you need to pause the video to copy that, go ahead and do that now. I'm going to move on. We're going to find example. We're going to talk about the formula first. Let's talk about the formula. So here we go. So the formula is I equals PRT. On most tests, you'll have that formula, but it's not going to tell you what those letters mean. So you're going to need to take a little bit of time to make sure that you know what they mean. So let's talk about it. What do you think the I means? The I is the interest. So that's how much money you make, the interest that you're going to make, the amount of money. The P stands for the principal. So that's the amount of money, your starting amount, the starting amount you either borrowed or the starting amount that you deposited. So the $500 would be the principal from that earlier example. It's the starting amount. All right. And then we have the R. The R stands for the rate. That's where our percent comes in. And in our formula, we need to use the decimal name. So when we are calculating, we need to make sure we're using the decimal name. And finally, the T. The T stands for the time. So how many months did you have the money for? How many years did you borrow the money for? How many months or weeks did you put the money in the bank for? So the T stands for time. So these are the pieces, the information we need. When we do the problems, they're going to give us 3 of them, and then we need to figure out the missing one. All right, and they're going to give us all different parts, and then we're going to figure it out. But this is just a formula. We're going to substitute, and then we're going to solve it. It'll become an equation. All right, so let's get started. Let's take a look at example 1. So example 1 says, to buy a car, Mitchell borrowed $17,000 for 3 years at an annual simple rate of 9%. If it takes him 3 full years to pay off the loan, how much interest will he pay? What? How exciting. Okay, so on example 1, underneath it, we're always going to start with the formula. The formula is I, interest, equals principal times rate times time. Remember, when we have variables and we have no sign, it just means that we're multiplying. So let's see. They're asking me how much interest, which means I do not have that. That's going to stay a variable. Now my principal, that's my starting amount. Do you guys see it? Yep, you got it. It's 17,000 times the rate. Do you guys see the rate? This is a percent. So we're looking for the percent. Here it is, 9%. Now, instead of writing it 9%, we have to use the decimal name. So 9%, we need to move that decimal over. Move the decimal over 2 to the left, right? So the decimal name for 9% is 0.09. And then how many years? 3 years, that's my time. 3 years is my time. 17,000 is my principal, and then 9% is my rate. So in this case, all we have to do is simplify this side. It's just a big math problem that we're going to use our calculator in order to figure out. So 17,000 times 0.09 times 3. It's a pretty big number, huh? Yep, it's $4,590. So that means that if Mitchell borrowed that money for the bank, he pays them $4,590 in interest, an extra amount just for borrowing from the bank. What? Okay, let's try another one. Ready? Example 2. Keith's parents deposited $2,500 into his savings account as a college fund when he was born. How much will Keith have in his account after 18 years at a yearly simple interest rate of 3.75%? Okay, so I equals PRT. Let's see what we can see in here. Here's my P, right? We started with that amount. He says, after 18 years, there's my time. And that interest rate, there's my rate. So then I'm looking for my R. So I equals 2,500 times 3.75%. Remember, we moved 2 to the left. So that's 0.0375 and times 18. All right, so we're going to use our calculator. Okay, so we end up with the interest equals, make sure you use your calculator, $1,687.50. So if his parents put that money into the savings account, that's how much they're going to earn. But the question didn't ask us how much interest he earned. The question asked us how much interest Keith would have in his account. So for this problem, we have to do one more step. If you just understand this step, that's fine. Okay, we're probably not going to have a quiz on this, but if you understand this step, that's fine. But I think many of you are probably able to understand that this question asks us for the total amount. So he started with $2,500 plus the bank gave him this amount. And so if we use our calculator, we can find out how much he has altogether. So 2,000, oh, I didn't put in my calculator right. So we have 2,500 plus 1,687.50, 4,187.5. Which means that after 18 years in the bank, they have this amount of money, which may not seem like a lot for 18 years, but they basically got $1,687 for free, just for keeping their money in the bank. So interest can be a really positive thing to earn. Okay, let's take a look at another example. Find example 3. Example 3 says a bank offers an annual simple interest rate of 7% on home improvement loans. How much would Tony owe if he borrowed $18,000 for 18 months? So I equals principal times rate times time. I see a rate here, 7%. How much would Tony owe if he borrowed $8,000? There's my starting amount, and there's my time. 18 months. Okay, so I equals 8,000 times 7%. You should be getting good at turning these into a decimal. 7% is 0.07, right? We have to move it 2 to the left. And 18 months. Make sure you're using your calculator, have that handy. I'm using mine. And we end up with Okay, so I got a really big number. Did you guys? I got a really big number. It was $8,018.07. And in my head, that doesn't make sense. That's not reasonable. You shouldn't, 7% is much, you shouldn't pay the same amount you borrowed in interest. So this one's a little bit more complicated. Let's take a look. It says that the interest rate is annual, which means it's calculated by the year. That means that 18 months in terms of years, 18 months is 1.5 years. So I'm going to change that to 1.5. Instead of doing 18 months, I have to do it 1.5, or because it's annual, it's based off of the year. So then the interest is, now let's see if this makes more sense. $840. That makes more sense. So if Tony borrowed $8,000, he would have to pay back the $8,000 plus the $840 interest for a total of $8,840. All right, let's try one more. Example 4. So example 4 says Mackenzie invested $3,500 in a mutual fund at a yearly rate of 6%. She earned $945 in interest. How long was the money invested? So now I see my P, I see my R, which is 0.06. And now this one's a little bit different. Now I see my interest. So let's see what happens in this case. So we're going to start with the formula. Instead of interest, I'm going to put 945. 3,500 is my principal times 0.06 is my rate times, there's my variable T. Now my variable is on the other side of the equation. So let's just solve this using our understanding of equations. So the first thing we need to do is we need to simplify this side. So this 3,500 times 0.06, we need to put that in our calculator first. And that gives me 210. So this side is just going to come down and hang out and wait. And then we have 210 times T. This is a one-step equation. How do I undo a times 210? That's right. We have to divide by 210. And if I divide one side by 210, what do I have to do the other side? Divide by 210. And so when I do 945 divided by 210, I get 4.5. So what does this mean in this problem? That's right. So the money was invested for 4.5 years. Good job. All right, let's try example 5. Then you can pause the video if you need time to kind of look at things and think them through. Mrs. Smith invested some money in a bond with a yearly interest rate of 4%. She earned $800 in interest on the investment after 5 years. How much was the original investment? Oh, another missing value. I see that I have the rate here, 4%. My R. She earned $800 in interest. That's my I. 5 years, that's definitely a time. So here we go. That must mean my P is missing. Start with the formula every time. So $800 interest. I don't know my principal or my starting amount. My rate is 0.04 and my time is 5. So now again, we're just going to use our understanding of equations. We're going to need to simplify this by multiplying those two together using your calculator. And that is, so we end up with 800 equals P times 0.2, or you could say 0.2P. And how do we undo a times 0.2? Got it. We have to divide both sides by 0.2. And we end up with, boy, our calculator is getting a lot of use today. 4,000. So 4,000 equals P. So what does that mean? Well, that was her starting amount. That was what she deposited into the bank. That was her principal. So the original investment was $4,000. She left it in the bank for 5 years. That means she earned an extra $800 interest. Anybody interested in business, finance, thinking about going into that? Maybe your parents are into that. Like that's all, this is the starting point of that interest. One last example before you're going to do a review activity or a practice activity. is example 6. Mr. McGee borrowed $8,000 for 4 years to remodel his restaurant. If he repaid a total of $10,320, what interest rate did he borrow the money from? So this one is a bit of a challenge and will not be anything that you'll have to do independently, but I bet some of you can. So let's take a look. He borrowed $8,000. So that's my starting amount. That's my principal. We have time, the 4 years, right? And then it says he repaid a total of that. Now that doesn't tell me the interest. This tells me the total amount. And then what interest rate? So I know that my R is what's going to be missing. But this here, in order to figure out the interest, right? This is the total amount he repaid. Let's think about this. We're going to take the total amount he repaid and we're going to subtract the starting amount. So this is the total minus the principal. So again, using my calculator, and I get 2,320. And that gives me the interest. Totally paid back, starting amount. There's my interest. All right, let's get this problem done. So we have interest equals principal times rate times time. Now I know my interest is $2,320. My principal was $8,000. My rate is missing, but my time is 4 years. So the first thing I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to simplify this side by multiplying 8,000 times 4. 8,000 times 4 gives me 32,000 times R. To undo this, I need to divide by 32,000. And if I divide one side by 32,000, I have to, that's right, divide the other side by 32,000. So let's see, what is 2320 divided by 32,000? Oh, I get a decimal, don't worry, 0.0725. Any ideas? So my rate is 0.0725. Now remember I told you when we do the rate, we do it as a decimal. So now we just need to take this 0.0725 and turn it into its percent name. How do we do that? We move it in the other direction. So that means that this Mr. McGee paid 7.25% interest. All right, so we did a lot of problems and we did have a few that were a little bit different. Today, you're going to do some practice. If you're feeling overwhelmed, keep your notes out. If you're still feeling like you don't understand this, don't worry. We're going to do some more practice on it and you will not have a quiz on it. But it is important information for you to know as a pre-algebra student. Using formulas is always very important. I just want you to take your time and practice today. See if you got it. And if you don't, we'll do extra practice on it. I think that if you're getting it, that's awesome. So I really am missing you guys. I hope that you have a fun practice right now, and I will be back again tomorrow.